Hello and welcome to the special edition of What's Your Take, where we discuss the hottest topics and how they impact your daily life. And here with me today is my special guest, Darren Martin, CTO of Wood. Wood is a project, operations and consultancy company unlocking solutions across the energy and the built environment markets. Darren, thanks very much for being here today and welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Thor. Good to see you again.
Hey, thank you so very much.
And safe.
Yes, absolutely. And Darren Martin, you are the CTO of the Wood Group. You're based over in the UK. I'm here in Houston, of course. So thanks for making time for us in the evening here from your perspective. But I was wondering, we have a couple of questions that we've looked up leading into this that I kind of just want to use to guide our conversation. And obviously something that's top of mind right now, for me definitely, and probably also for you and for your clients, in that respect, is as we emerge from COVID-19 and are responding, resetting and renewing our businesses, where do some of the innovations that Wood is working in fit in addressing the current and future challenges? Things like the stuff that we've been working on together with the TED initiative and some of these things. What's your take on that one?
Well, look, I think pre-COVID, as an innovation capability, myself and my team had worked with different parts of our business to prioritize a whole bunch of innovation. And we were lined up at the beginning of the year in January and had a really good set of innovations that we were going to run through in FY20. And COVID hit, and that made us really think about that innovation portfolio that we had. And we split that into three priorities. Those things that we absolutely had to keep going with full steam ahead because they enabled connectivity amongst our workforce. And whilst we've seen in parts of the world, nearly everywhere has adopted Teams working. We're meeting today on Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, house party. There are technologies that have kept knowledge workers going. But a lot of our workforce, around 13,500 of our workforce, are field services, tradecraft professionals around in the field. And we also have a lot of people that are building assets, and we are assembling those assets. In fact, we did a piece during early part of COVID where we had assembly from factory items from Europe that were taken over to Canada. And we had to do a lot of that assembly work and factory acceptance testing remotely using Teams, or what we refer to as Skype in a hat, and connecting some of our engineering people, our field services people across the world to build essential infrastructure or repair essential infrastructure that's essentially been powering society during this pandemic, whether it be energy companies, pharmaceutical companies, and so on. We've had to keep going. So for us, it was really important to make sure that we doubled our efforts on those technologies. So for us, things like connected worker, connecting our people up in the field, we just renewed our emphasis on that, and we are pushing ahead with a major program to roll that out across our global community of 13,500 field services workers. But what it also did was, we had some pretty good innovations that we were moving forward with on, say, upstream oil and gas, or some of the what I would call LNG activities and the fracking activities. So in some countries, particularly America, the capital investment in those projects has really reduced, and we don't see that bouncing back in a hurry. So we had to dial down and put some of those great ideas and innovations back on the back burner. But
yeah, which might actually be quite unfortunate because, and this is a great segue, something I was wondering about. There is a lot of pressure, particularly on the oil and gas industry with respect to sustainability, net zero goals, things like that. There is, rightly or wrongly, from a perception perspective, the perception of oil and gas be that great at the moment in society. And so, one of the things that I was looking for engaging with Wood prior to COVID-19 is some of the things that we are working on to maybe change that perception. to show how actually involved industry players are in creating a positive impact on sustainability on a day-to-day basis in the oil and gas companies themselves, as well as in the support industry, the engineering firms, and the EPCs. What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think it's a good point. I mean, it's probably worth framing what what Wood is to the audience. So Wood is a consulting projects and operations services company. We've got 45,000 inquisitive minds working around 60 different countries. And around 7 years ago, a large part of our origins were focused on oil and gas, particularly upstream oil and gas. Around 95% of our revenues were from oil and gas clients upstream. Now, we've been on a very fast journey since then to really broaden and pivot into new markets. So at this point in time, upstream oil and gas represents around 35% of our revenues, upstream and midstream. With the rest of our business is based around renewables, so around 25% of our just under 10 billion revenues in FY19 were from wind and solar, carbon capture and hydrogen type programs and projects, the built environment, pharmaceutical clients, and so on. And we've also been working with those sort of what we would call downstream clients, like petrochemical clients, that are really using some of those carbon-based fuel products to create different things other than fuel. So we've been working with some of the major companies like BP and Shell as they now look into their future, and they transition from heavy dependency on carbon energy, and now they're moving, really purposefully an accelerated rate into wind and solar, for example, and tidal. We're used to working with them. We've already made some of these changes ourselves, and it's a natural fit to continue work with them to accelerate that journey. But at the same time, we've been working with what we would call some of the pure play energy companies that have been renewable from day one. Mm-hmm. And they've had a head start on this journey. And we're able to help them, add more value for them, and potentially take some of that expertise and assist other companies as they begin their journey.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things I'm wondering to get your perspective on is what I'm seeing is a lot of, particularly on the more downstream side of things, a lot of the facilities that we have, particularly here in the United States, are aging facilities. They've been around for a while. And so when they were constructed, certainly you could say that perhaps not the latest and greatest in terms of thinking around sustainability was used, right? It just wasn't on the table back then. So from your perspective, some of the things that Wood is working on with respect to twinning, digital twinning, improving operation performance via digital twins, things like that. How do you see that impacting things like environmental sustainability?
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to really dive into environmental sustainability in a moment. But if I give you a sense of my answer to that with regard to digital twin, again, before COVID, we placed some bets. And actually, they were pretty shrewd bets because COVID has accelerated some of our thinking. So with digital twin, we knew that some technology providers were pretty good at providing a 3D twin at the design level, but using twinning technologies to really drive out total expenditure reduction. So, using technologies like digital twin to accelerate schedules, to avoid delays, but more importantly, to help reduce operational expenditure once the asset is commissioned, was something we were really, really focused on. And we felt that there was a lot of talk in the market around what different vendors could do and some system integrators could do, but we weren't really seeing our clients realize as much value as they would hope, and we saw a market opportunity there. We split the world into 3 types of digital twin scenarios. One of them would be a greenfield digital twin. How would we want to help a client develop an efficient, sustainable asset from the beginning, knowing all that we know about the technologies, How would we help them in that design phase, build phase, and then operate phase with our utopian digital twin? And that's great, but with COVID, we've seen less capital floating around. And so those projects that are really important are still in train, but there are fewer of them in some markets, there are fewer of them in some regions. We also had a scenario where we wanted to help clients that had a big asset like a petrochemical plant, but who wanted to do what we call a brownfield modification. So something to improve the efficiency of that asset, both from a reliability perspective, from a process perspective, and from an environmental perspective. And finally, we got very focused on what we would call brownfield optimization. So this is, you know, some of those assets that are already in play. They're not going to have a lot of capital investment put in them to modify them. But what is it that we can do on those brownfield assets to just increase the yield? So on. And we found that because of COVID, the importance of that third scenario, some of these assets were due to be decommissioned, and they're unlikely to be decommissioned. They're going to need to work harder, longer. And so there's quite a big market opportunity with our clients to help get a better yield, a better sustainability footprint, a carbon reduction footprint, and a safer footprint from a workforce perspective for longer. And we're seeing some good growth opportunities there. And in some cases, we've partnered with our clients to drive operational efficiencies, and we have chosen with them to turn that into a gain share, so that we're able to really put our money where our mouth is, in the sense that we invest with the client, we come up with some outcomes that help them reduce their operational footprint, and they share a more meaningful prize with us than we would otherwise get through consulting.
Now, you mentioned putting your money where your mouth is, and on that point, I wanted to ask you. You've been participating in Microsoft's DTA a few weeks ago, and there were some announcements made between Microsoft and Wood with respect to fostering sustainability. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, sure, Thor. So the Digital Transformation Academy was a great opportunity to profile the very important relationship that Microsoft and Wood have established around sustainability. We know that Microsoft has made an extraordinary commitment to reduce its carbon footprint in a negative way, to go back to where it was at its inception in 1975 by 2030. And we're privileged to be able to be working with Microsoft to help them achieve that goal. In addition to that, together with Microsoft, we believe that there's a combined role that we can both play in addressing the carbon footprints of most of our mutual clients. So looking at those clients in industry, in energy, looking at those clients in the built environment, including municipals, cities, and so on. There's a great overlap in terms of what we do to help those clients and what Microsoft does to help them. And together, we feel that we can really accelerate the journey that some of those major oil and gas companies, some of those major energy companies, and built environment organizations are taking right now to achieve their sustainability goals. So as part of that, Thor, we have identified a range of technologies that we'll be jointly releasing to the market. They're based on the Azure cloud platform. They make use of IoT and edge technologies from Microsoft, and make use of the AI and data analytics capabilities, but combine our deep domain knowledge in sustainability and carbon reduction to help clients achieve their goals. The first of those is a product called Envision. And what this does is it allows, at a chimney or a flaring point, through to an entire petrochemical plant, through to a potentially electrified fleet. It allows us to, at the micro, macro, and global scale, get a handle on the environmental emissions that any particular company or government or city is making. And we can track that in real time, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, year by year, and measure that against the sustainability goals and carbon reduction goals that those entities have set themselves. So it's a real-time feedback loop. And I think I think that has some, wide-reaching appeal. Everyone needs it. Everyone should have it. It's easy to consume. It's in the cloud. It's on proven technologies. And so I really see this potentially becoming the ubiquitous technology platform for measuring and assessing and comparing carbon emissions and environmental monitoring for all heavy industry and potentially across most organizations in the world.
That's awesome stuff, because obviously you can't, the first step to managing something effectively is to measure it, right? And so if you can't measure it effectively, then how are you going to manage it? Yeah, no, that's awesome stuff, and that's exactly, the in my mind, the way I view it, you're bringing together the digital stack of something like a Microsoft and the stack of knowledge, expertise on the engineering side. Brings to the table. You put these two things together and you get something that is much bigger than the sum of the parts, and that's going to enable us to operate those assets, as you say, in a more sustainable way for longer. And that's exactly, I think, what we need, because it is not realistic, I think, at this stage to just say let's all switch them off, because we need them, right? I mean, we need those capabilities that these plans give us. So you guys teaming up to make them operate more sustainably, I think is a tremendous service to society and to the globe. So it's awesome stuff.
Well, we have some other, we'll be talking more. Hopefully we can stay connected. I give you other updates, but to give you a flavor of some of the things that we'll be releasing with Microsoft, we have some technologies that are able to visualize what what the flood levels will look like in certain cities in 5, 10, 15 years ahead. So it's literally an augmented reality capability that will help really visualize what's going on around the world and make that very accessible. So if one was thinking about buying a house, or we were working with town planners and helping them really think about resiliency at a city level, looking at flood defenses and so on, this is a really simple technology will help bring this to life. And I think that will inform major infrastructure plans going forward.
Oh, that's awesome stuff. I'm looking forward to see it. Actually, on that point, my question to you is, when can I see this stuff back in the collab? When are you going to reopen the collab? Any advice on that one?
No. Look, COVID, and it's taught us many things. One of them is resiliency and adaptability. And what I'm quite proud of, for those people on the call that don't kind of relate to our collab, is it's a design thinking environment where we bring our partners like Avanade, we bring some of the software companies together with our clients, with our consulting projects and operations expertise, and really have a go at some of the biggest challenges out there that some of our clients are facing right now. And we have some beautiful locations in Europe. We have them, and also in America. And we haven't been able to use them as often as we'd like because of the social distancing restrictions and travel restrictions. So what we did do was we turned that whole experience into a virtual experience. Mm-hmm. So our collabs are now online. They're 3D immersive experiences. So you go into them and they look exactly the way in Houston. And we virtualized that whole environment. We've got touch screens on the screen. You can push some of our demos, and the whole experience is translated to a virtual one. And what I would say is that obviously there are limitations with any virtual experience. We would normally be doing this podcast together, right?
Yes.
But I think what it's allowed us to do is access more people more quickly. So we've been doing these virtual experiences with teams across the world multiple times. And so it's made our virtual collab experience more accessible, more usable, and we see this as now a necessary part of the physical experience. We'd want to run the virtual ones in advance as a warm-up before we were to potentially invest in having everybody come together.
To kind of maybe round it up, I wonder, we talked about the additive manufacturing, 3D printing, 4D printing increasingly also to add that capability to change the physical structure over time. So those type of emerging technologies, right? As a digital innovator, what value do you see for these technologies to create a more resilient future, to address some of the challenges and help us improve our employee and customer as we kind of evolve forward on our path?
I would say that the most important thing for us as an organization to get right is the balance between keeping our people safe, designing and building, and particularly operating things in a more sustainable way. And where we can, using technologies to enrich that experience, right? So some of the technologies, when they're first introduced, can be quite threatening to a workforce. Mm-hmm. It's why do you want to come in and take over my job? Why do you want to automate this process? But if one is really positive about gaining more market share through innovation, I think there's a lot of really exciting work that our people can do. But degrees of automation, whether it be design in the case of Master Builder, or potentially through 3D printing, for me takes some of those more repetitive or harmful activities into a safer environment. Mm-hmm. And so as I look at a world where we don't want to put too many people in at this point in time, but there are ways of going there, accelerating the build schedule, and potentially allowing things to be run more autonomously and more efficiently, and allowing for parts to be potentially printed on site rather than having to use a lot of carbon through the supply chain. I'm all for that. What we have to do is just find the right appetite, the right commercial model, to balance what's more appropriate for humans to do versus what can technology start taking over. And if we look at the previous industrial revolutions that have happened, there's always been that tension with combine harvesters and tractors taking over the plow. There's always a wave. And when we look back, you'd never dream of asking a farmer to go out and use a plow now, because we want productivity, we want great food, great natural organic food, but we want the productivity. So we're just at that phase of looking at the best applications of technology.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. You hear a lot about concerns about robotics, AI, and automation displacing traditional jobs. But if you look at past industrial revolutions, really that's no different, right? And if history has taught us one thing, well, actually really two things. Number one is that, with every kind of transformational technology that you introduce, you also introduce new demand for certain skills, for certain roles, and for certain capabilities around this technology that just weren't there before, right? So there's going to be a tremendous amount of new opportunity for people to transition into as existing roles might become more obsolete and they get sunsetted. And the other thing is it's freed up more human time away from the mundane to be creative, to do what we really do best, which is use our intellect and use our brain to make the world a better place. Well, there you have it. Thanks, Darren, for being our guest today. It was a pleasure having you on. We'll be checking back with Darren over the next few months to see about the progress of the Master Builder program, as well as its adoption in the energy industry. In the meanwhile, please join me back for our regular What's Your Take podcast, where we're going to be exploring post-COVID return to work challenges. We'll see you then.